Hello and welcome. Before we start, I want to clarify something important. When we talk about entrepreneurship in VET, we are not talking about starting businesses. We are talking about a shift in how we design learning itself. In many vocational systems, learners are trained to execute tasks correctly. But the reality of today's labor market is different. Employers are not only looking for execution, they are looking for people who can adapt, identify problems, and create solutions in uncertain contexts. So this model is not about adding entrepreneurship as a topic, but it is about transforming teaching practice into something more experiential, more dynamic, and more aligned with real-world complexity. On this first idea, I want you to rethink what entrepreneurship means in your classroom. Most trainers associate it with business creation, but in VET, that's too narrow. Think instead about what happens when a learner faces a real-work situation. They don't just apply knowledge, they interpret, adjust, decide, and sometimes improvise. That ability to act in uncertainty is entrepreneurship competence. So when we say smart labs, we are talking about learning environments where learners are not passive receivers, but active problem solvers. Let me go deeper than the objectives on the slide. These objectives are not just things you should understand, but they represent a progression in your teaching identity. First, you move from seeing entrepreneurship as a theory to seeing it as a pedagogical lens. Then you start recognizing competencies not as abstract frameworks, but as behaviors you can trigger in classroom activities. And finally, you reach the most important level. You stop asking, what should I teach? And start asking, what experience should my learners go through? One thing I often see in that context is that learners are very skilled technically, but less prepared for uncertainty. They can execute tasks, but struggle when the situation changes. Entrepreneurship education addresses exactly that gap. It creates learners who don't freeze when there is no clear instruction. Instead, they ask, what is the problem? What is the opportunity here? What value can I create? And this is extremely important today, because almost every job is becoming less predictable and more problem-based. I want to clarify a common misunderstanding. Entrepreneurship education is not about teaching ideas or business plans. It is about designing learning cycles from action to reflection to improvement and to reaction. In other words, learners don't just learn content. They test it in a situation, observe what happens, and adjust. This is why it is relevant in all vocational domains, even technical ones like mechanics, hospitality, or IT, because every profession has problems to solve, not just tasks to execute. The Intercom framework helps us structure entrepreneurial learning around 6 key competencies, from spotting opportunities to creativity, initiative, resource, mobilization, collaboration, and learning through experience. In VET, these competencies are not abstract. They are directly linked to employability, innovation, and to professional autonomy. So every learning activity can be designed to activate at least one of these competencies in real contexts. Let me translate this framework into classroom reality. For example, spotting opportunities is when a learner notices inefficiencies in a process. Creativity is when they propose an alternative method. Initiative is when they act without being told. So these are not theoretical competencies. They are observable behaviors in learning activities. Your role as a trainer is to design situations where these behaviors naturally appear. Now, the key question is, how do we integrate this in teaching practice? This is where most trainers struggle. They think they need to redesign the entire course, but in reality, embedding entrepreneurship can start very small. Instead of giving a fixed exercise, for example, you can give a problem scenario. Instead of asking for a correct answer, you ask for multiple solutions. And instead of evaluating only results, you also evaluate the process. So it's not a revolution, it's a shift in design mindset. We move from traditional content, as I said, to project-based learning, also to real vocational challenges, and to collaborative activities. And without forgetting the reflective learning. The shift is fundamental from passive reception of knowledge to active competence development. Entrepreneurial learning cannot happen through theory alone. One key principle here is that learning happens in iteration. In traditional teaching, mistakes are avoided. By an entrepreneurial learning, as we know, mistakes are data. So when a learner tries a solution that fails, the question is not, why is it wrong? The question becomes, what did we learn from this attempt? And that requires experience. Methods like problem-based learning, design thinking, simulations, and mini projects allow learners to experiment, collaborate, and iterate solutions. And importantly, failure is not a problem. It is part of the learning cycle. This is a critical mindset shift for both trainers and learners. This is probably the most important transformation. As a trainer, you are no longer the center of knowledge. You become a designer of situations. Your impact is not in what you explain, but in what you allow learners to experience. And this requires a different posture. Less control, more facilitation, less answers, more questioning. An entrepreneurial classroom is not created by tools or posters. It is created by micro-interactions. For example, how you react to a wrong answer, how you handle uncertainty in a group work, how you encourage or block initiative. These small moments define whether learners feel safe to experiment or not. They should feel empowered to test ideas and make decisions. And now, to make this operational, we provide a structured toolkit for trainers. It's not just a set of templates, it is